that this slide was actually going to show. But we can go ahead, I guess, and start sharing what we discussed in our breakout rooms. I was actually in breakout room once, so I can be speaker for my group, and then they can add anything if they want to. But we basically just kind of discussed how how we should take the time to appreciate the history of all the different medicinal practices and the value that they add to Western medicine and just to medicine culture in general, I guess, and how we've come to develop the therapies that we have today. And just to implement more holistic medicine and trying to stay healthy into every aspect of life. And then how it was interesting that a lot of Eastern medicine concepts have a basis in the same thing as Western medicine does. So they kind of, that synergistic word that we were using before. And then a way to kind of, more combine them, but with the appropriate experts to ensure that the culture and the important aspects or just every aspect of the medicine is properly conveyed and practiced. We discussed the MD versus DO viewpoint and how they get almost the same education, but potentially DO might be a little bit more holistic, and kind of getting into the mind of what can we do when we give people pills, what can we do to be more preventative versus curative, and then kind of talking a little bit how to approach changing whitewashing or commenting, advocating against it, and how we need to kind of have a specific and genuine understanding with people that may not know what it is or maybe disagree along those lines, and then just people to advocate. So that was kind of what we discussed. Unless my group wants to share more, breakout room 2, what did you guys say?
So I'll summarize our discussion. So I think like the pervasive theme in our discussion was just sort of like frustration with like the fact that like opioids are sort of the backbone of like modern Western medicine, and like the complex that exists between like pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, lobbyists, government, like that whole cycle. And so we didn't know that some of us didn't know that Western medicine was so closely linked to opioids. Some of us didn't know a lot of the practices that fell under the umbrella of Eastern medicine, because like a lot of these things, like we've heard of them individually, but we didn't know that they were part of like a more complex like network of treatment options. So then we talked a little bit about different things that we do. Like some of us have, done meditation and yoga and acupuncture, and things like that, again, like some of us didn't even realize like really what the cultural significance of those things are, which I know that we heard a little bit about earlier. And then we sort of like really got into it and like became, our little progressive selves. And we talked about how people should not like be charged more money than they possess in order to survive, in order to be healthy. And then one person in our group mentioned they didn't know about a generic option for medication that they were taking for a long time, and that a lot of people don't know that there are generic options to medications which would save them money. I talked a little bit about like a medication that I'm on that costs tens of thousands of dollars a dose, and like how, I have to completely rely on a private insurance that, I get through my dad being employed. And then we sort of talked about like who's to blame for all of this, because it's easy to sort of like blame people for getting addicted to medications. It's easy to blame doctors for prescribing medications to people. But at the end of the day, it's like, it circles back to like that corporate, and political complex that I mentioned earlier.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, breakout room 3, what did you guys talk about?
All right, so we really focused on how Eastern medicine was mainly a preventative measure for ailments and any illnesses, whereas Western medicine is mainly treating after the fact that an individual is already inflicted with the disease. And then we brought up a debate on how Western medicine is really regulated and how people trust it. But if Eastern medicine, if that was regulated, would people still trust that? And whether or not the experts in those fields are really experts. So we spent a lot of time really delving into that. And we talked about how the FDA regulates pharmaceutical supplements that we find like turmeric powder or anything. They're really not. They just make statements, but the FDA cannot verify those. So you're really trusting what the company is saying. And really, we focused a lot about that, and we learned a lot from the slides about how Western medicine is like a machine, and the MD culture is basically treating a body as a machine and treating an individual as a part of that machine. And Eastern medicine is just a holistic approach to that body.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I think we're on group number 4. What did you guys discuss?
A lot of the stuff we talked about was a lot of the stuff that everyone else talked about. But one thing, we had a lot of specific examples, and we talked about how Eastern medicine in the US is so watered down, and it's just, we don't even know if it's the right person doing it. We talked about how it like doesn't incorporate like the culture as much as it should, when that's such a backbone to Eastern medicine. And one of the girls in our group, she was talking about how her parents are from India, and they use Eastern medicine as well, like in conjunction with Western medicine, but how some of the therapies, like some of the things that they would get in India, they don't trust over here because it's just different, and you don't know, again, like it doesn't have that cultural appreciation. So we talked about that a lot, and we talked about the synergy a lot, and how if we use both Eastern and Western medicine, how that can make people so much better off. We also talked about like the difference between like a DO and an MD, and had some experience with that. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. I wish I could be in every breakout room. All of these conversations sound so great. All right, the last one, breakout room 5, what did you guys talk about?
So we were talking a little bit about how Eastern medicine is kind of like profited off of, and like the main topic that we were really focusing on was addiction, and kind of how like Western medicine looks at like the root cause of the problem, just like the problem of addiction, while Eastern medicine focuses on like kind of the external factors that could cause addiction. And we talked a little bit about how Eastern medicine is just a little bit more of like a holistic approach. And I think Maria specifically mentioned how like several decades ago, the U.S. Oncology UC Oncology Department was recruiting people of color to do like unsafe cancer treatments and kind of taking advantage of these vulnerable populations. And Adam raised this important question of like, how does the healthcare system build trust with these communities? So that was a little bit what we talked about.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for sharing and discussing this topic. I think that kind of concludes our discussion. Do I hand it back over to Shaylin and Maria now?
Great, thank you. I was so happy to be a part of the breakout rooms today. These discussions were amazing. So shout out to Internal for creating such an informative ghU. I loved it. And we have some additional references and further reads, so we'll be sure to include those in a recap email so that you can take a look at all of those. All right, so we have our collective breath now. Does anybody have a quote or any reflections that they would like to share? I'll give us a minute to put things in the chat. Wow, Naga's on top of it quickly. Love it. Okay, so I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and ask all of you to unmute yourself, put yourself in grid mode. And our quote is, be passionate and be involved in what you believe in and do it as thoroughly and honestly and fearlessly as you can. So with that, you can soften your gaze or close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and exhale. All right. So we do have just
All right. Hey, everyone. Hopefully you all had your individual giving committee meetings last week and those went well. So by now you should have all been had. Finals, whatever goes on for you after Thanksgiving. So just try your best to try to get all those things in before Thanksgiving. We will still accept them afterward, but it's just a lot easier if you try to keep on top of it now before like finals come around and everything like that. Just a heads up, your committee leaders will be checking in with you a few times a week to make sure that, you know, if you need something that they can provide that to you, and if you need help, they can help you with those. Try to like make sure that you know that if they're checking in, it's not a negative thing, and they're not like bad as much as not give 10. Try something else to do. That could be like, but we will get back to you on that as soon as we can. Also, if you happen to be a GlobMob veteran, I recently discovered with Ajit that I can send people their lists from last year. So if any of you are veterans and you made a list last year and you want to know some of those contacts you wrote to and their addresses, just like DM me in the group chat or text me or something, and I can send you a PDF of all the addresses pretty quickly. Does anybody have any questions or anything like that? Okay, well, since nobody has any questions, I think that is all for individual giving. But like I said, feel free to reach out to me or the co-presidents or your committee leaders for anything that you need, and just try to, like I said, try to get all these contacts and stuff done before Thanksgiving. You don't even have to write the letters yourself. You just have to like copy and paste your personal message in there, and that makes it very nice to submit the form. But I think that is everything.
Awesome. Thank you, Noah. And yeah, like I said in the chat, this is like one of the most direct ways that we can support SAW, especially this year with so much uncertainties and, you know, having to cut back on our fundraising goals. I really encourage you all to get involved in this campaign. We'll help you out in any way to get involved. So feel free. All right. And then Matthew, I will pass it over to you.
All right, hey everybody. It is time for another chapter call with ATL. So the call is planned for this Thursday evening at 9 p.m. It will happen on Zoom, and the details are there and will be sent out in the email. Our partnerships, or these calls, are one of the strongest ways in which we strengthen our partnership, because we are constantly getting updates from ATL. We'll talk to him about things that are happening here. Recently, Myanmar had elections and he was following that, and I'm sure we'll hear updates about that from him at this call. If you have questions or are just curious about the partnership, about who ATL is, I would highly encourage you to come join us for a call with ATL this Thursday. These are also recorded, so it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, so also another fun update. We've chosen our GROW team for 2021. We saw a lot of good applications and project proposals, and the interviews all went great. And thank you to everyone who interviewed. It was a pleasure talking to all of you about GlobMed in general. But yeah, these are our GROW interns for this coming year. Me, Jonathan, Noah, Maria, Elizabeth, Adam, Shaylin, Brooke, and Kirstna. So good work, team. And if anyone has any thoughts on like what they'd like to see out of ghROW this coming year, feel free to let me know. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And congratulations to our 2021 cohort. So excited. All right. So here we go, closing out the meeting. Just to recap, we talked about individual giving. You know who to reach out to, me, Shaylin, Noah, the rest of the campaigns team. As always, we record and post these on our YouTube channel. If you would like to be censored, feel free to either email or message Shaylin or I privately in the chat. We'll take care of that for you. Our Skype call this Thursday, looking forward to it. And then very exciting, I'm kind of sad, our last meeting of the semester is next week, but we are going to be visited by Jason Blackard, who is a wonderful global health advocate and our chapter advisor, as well as Najma, who is our chapter coach and part of the larger Globe network. So you'll get a chance to like interact with them, and then we'll just have a lot of fun time next week. Shaylin and I are gonna whip up a cool meeting. Yeah, so I look forward to seeing you all there. And then if you could just add a plus or delta for our meeting in the chat, what is something that you like, something you didn't like, so that we could work on it for our future meetings the next semester. We will also be sending out a feedback form for you to give us your thoughts on how this semester went. It was our first time ever, obviously, doing it virtually. So Shaylin and I and the rest of the e-board are super open to whatever thoughts. He's gonna break us out into our committee town.